Let's see. It's called a newspaper. Casey Rohr's past record for annual M&A deals, mergers and acquisitions. Why plentiful corporate cash, private equity, low rates help hit all new heights. Mergers and acquisitions. There's this assumption that when you're thinking about doing something in an organization, one of your options is, what if we go buy a solution? What if we go buy another company and it'll help us to become more innovative faster? Well, we asked this question. It got brought up recently. It was like, does it seem like there's more M&A deals going on right now? And we've had friends selling their companies. We've had peers or clients that are buying up companies. And it's like, it just seems like there's a lot of activity. We'll come to find out there's a lot of activity right now. Recently, a Deloitte study showed that 92% of executives expected that they were going to see a huge uptick in M&A deals, mergers and acquisitions, companies combining over the next year. That's a lot. That's a huge influx. Now, there is some questions, right? Because the rates, I think, are supposed to go back up, and so money won't be as cheap as it was. There's this whole war going on. There was a pandemic just a second ago. But people are looking for creative solutions to figure out how to build their organizations faster. Anyone who's paying attention knows that, there's a big issue with hiring where you can't find talent anywhere. So one of the reasons that people are thinking about mergers and acquisitions is like, well, I could buy this company and all of a sudden it comes with this workforce. Another reason that people are thinking about mergers and acquisitions is like, I need a piece of technology that does maybe what my piece of technology doesn't quite do. And so if I buy that company, I'll have that tech and we can offer it to our customers. Another reason might be you kind of want your competition to not be there, right? So you buy that competition up and you say, I'm not gonna have to compete with them anymore because we can integrate that tool into us. Whatever the reason is, an M&A is often a great deal, and it has this ideal scenario in our brains, which is to say, if I'm about to sell my company, I'm really proud of this thing that I've spent nights, weekends, years, months working on, and I'm gonna sell it for some 10x value. I'm gonna go buy a yacht and I'm gonna go retire early and life's gonna be perfect. And of course, I took care of my employees because I made sure that they all had a job in this new company that's acquiring my company. Dream scenario. On the flip side, I'm buying up this company, right? I'm gonna have talent, I'm gonna have technology, I'm gonna have competitive advantage now because the tool I'm buying, the people that I'm acquiring, that's gonna help us to move faster and get more done. Dream scenario. But what's the reality like? In the last 15 years of being around both the startup space or the corporate innovation space or just in the work world, the business world, we've seen a bunch of companies either sell or acquire teams. And it can go really well. I'll just say up front that the best case scenario that we've seen is when a company acquires another organization, they allow that company to run and operate very similar to how they already were as an independent organization, but it gets brought into the umbrella of the service offering or the product suite that larger umbrella company now has. So they get to keep their processes, they get to keep their approaches. They also might get maybe some better benefits because they get the advantage of being a part of a larger organization. They have a financial backing of a larger organization, but they really get to operate like the company they've always been. That's not always the case though. What we see often is that people are trying to merge two distinctly different things into one. Now, what are those distinctly different things? Let's start first with people. Organizations grow and adapt and become what they are because they evolve into what they need to be. You might have one organization that adopts very religiously agile processes and approaches. You might have another organization that kind of begs, borrows, and steals from different frameworks because that's what worked for them as they were growing. You might have one organization that's structured in a way where they have a very top-down management approach. So management has a really heavy hand in the decisions that are made. And then another organization that's more holacracy, which is kind of this idea of like everyone has an autonomous unit and is making decisions together. It's super collaborative. And I'm not saying that one of those is better than the other. But when you bring those two organizations together, now you have this challenge of saying we work differently. And the language and the things that you do and the way that you talk about the work to be done, it's different than the way that we've always done it, and I don't like it. So what often you'll see is that there's a big culture clash in two different teams coming together. Now that could be two small companies or two large companies or a large company buying up a smaller company. But either way, that integration of two different cultures into one is really hard. Another challenge is the technology piece, right? So there's assumption that if I have a product, I have an app and it does a thing, right? So I own Airbnb per se, right? I have a website that lists properties and then a part of my website allows people to go list their properties. But I want to get into food delivery to those properties. So I'm going to go buy a food delivery company. And it'll be as simple as saying, I'm going to take that food delivery company and just like plug it into the app that I have now. Well, in theory, that sounds great, right? Two different complementary services now being plugged in together to help your customers have more value. The idea of it's fantastic. The challenge of it is you've got two different brands in play, right? You've got two different technology stacks, baby. You've got multiple different UI frameworks. You've got lots of different data associations and the way that data was stored. You've got two different user groups that you have to figure out how to reconcile your user accounts. All of this has to be figured out as you're coming into figuring out how to bring this new technology into play. And then the third challenge is maybe you're an organization that hasn't been a technology organization before. It's not to say that you don't use technology. We all use technology, right? We all have email or documentation. We're all using Microsoft Excel, whether we want to or not. But you have considered your best way to get into technology as part of your service offering, as a part of your value proposition, is to go buy another company that had a technology approach or had a technology solution already in play. The challenge with that is that tech company likely was a tech company, or they had systems and processes and approaches in place to build technology. And now you've adopted this piece of technology, and that requires a new way of working, a new way of supporting, and a way that you've never had to deal with before. So being a first-time technology owner through an acquisition can be really difficult. What's the worst case scenario in these three situations? Number one, people. When you have two cultures like this clash, I've seen more often than I like to admit, a mass exodus. I can't tell you how many organizations I have known or been a part of that I've seen where the company got acquired, they were promised, this utopian solution where two organizations would come together, and within a year or 2 years, usually there's like a 2-year buyout for the founder, they're like, you know what, I'll take less of a buyout because I want to leave because this is not going the way I hoped it would, my people aren't happy, and everybody's quitting. And after 2 years, maybe less, the people that they actually acquired from that company are all gone. So the question is what did they get? Other than maybe they were trying to kind of get rid of their competitor, but what did they get out of that scenario when all the people left because they weren't actually being able to flourish in this new combined culture? And then on the technology front, the biggest thing that we see there is that there is the assumption that I'm going to get technology A, technology B, combine them together to have this like 1 + 1 = 5 value. What ends up happening actually is that this gets put on the shelf, the team gets frustrated, again you lose your talent, and then you end up having to rebuild the whole thing, maybe with the knowledge of these two solutions, but not the way that you thought you were going to get value, extra value real fast. Third scenario, you're a new technology company. You've now acquired this piece of tech. Again, the technology company is now a part of a larger organization that manages their people in a different way. Maybe it's manufacturing, or maybe it's a consulting services or something like that. They're not adopting an acceptance of an agile way of working or a lean way of working where they can iteratively work on this software to make sure that it keeps bringing value, because that's not the way management was done in the parent company. So what happens? The people that originally created the software are gone. The bigger company doesn't have a way to support this new piece of tech that they have, and they're stuck. They own tech, but they don't know how to manage it and keep it alive and help to iterate it into the product that they wanted it to become. So what do? Mergers are going to happen. Acquisitions are going to happen. That's often a goal of an organization, is to say, I'm building this solution not to be a 100-year-old company, but to build it, get a 10x, 100x, 200x. I guess if you're into NFTs, like 1,000x, I don't know. You can get these huge returns on building value and selling it. But you must consider that when you do that, your intentionality has to go from a 1 to an 11. So now you have to be thinking, when the teams come together, the technology comes together, or you're adopting a new piece of technology, what are you willing to change on both sides of the organization to make this work as a symbiotic, as a valuable relationship of these two organizations come together? So consider a few things when you're jumping into M&A, and we're seeing more and more of it. So I want our clients, our listeners, our audience to be thinking about this, is that first, take inventory. Make sure you understand what is true for this organization, what is true for that other team. And then as you start to slowly, give it some time, merge these two organizations together, how can you make sure that you're taking into consideration what has been true for both these organizations and not assuming that just smashing them together will all of a sudden get the best results? So that leads into the second thing, give it time. I know that often an M&A is done because you want to actually accelerate value, right? Especially in private equity or venture capital, there's this feeling of, I want my 1 plus my 1 to equal 3, to equal 5. When you're pulling together two different cultures, you need to give it time that you're going to be able to figure out, how do we make sure that the right people are in the right spot on the bus? How do we make sure that our management structures are in place to support people's trajectory as individuals, as teams, as a purpose and value of the organization, and how do you build that common vocabulary together? And then the final piece is to say, you got your time, you're taking your inventory, you've given it time, and then to make sure that you understand that people are aligned on a common purpose. So you might have had individual purposes as organizations. Now there needs to be a new narrative written together. So how do you write that narrative together so that those teams come together really well? We get this weird, kind of unique perspective as an agency, because this is kind of what we get to do every time we start with a new client. So we engage with a client and they say, we want to build this thing, we want to have this piece of technology, we want to design this user experience, or we want to explore this opportunity. And what we have to do is say, hey, Crema's coming as an outside organization, bringing its processes, its practices, its experiences, its knowledge to the table, and you have your processes, approaches, knowledge, and experiences, and we have to figure out how to bring those together. Now, what we found is that usually at first there's an excitement. Just like after M&A, it's like, well, let's all throw a party. We just merged our companies. There's this curve where it goes up of excitement, and then it's like reality sets in that this is hard work. Maybe everything isn't going perfect. Maybe the way you make decisions are different than the way we used to make decisions. Maybe there's a little bit of nostalgia for the way it used to be, and you start to kind of tilt off. The question is are you going to take the intentional time to turn that back around and create that common narrative to work together to turn this into something really valuable for the future? That's the people piece. Technology is almost the exact same story, it's just about the tech. So a couple things that you want to consider. Take inventory of what you have in play. How's your data stored? Where's your brand and how does it get applied? What's the user experience on each of these products? And then really take a very honest look at, can we bring these two pieces of technology together, or is this time to think about a fresh approach? So we recently were working with a client that actually had just gone through this. They had acquired up multiple different brands, and what they've realized is that in order to be effective as a company going forward, they needed to unify that experience, which required us to take inventory of this UX across all these products and then say, what does this unified experience feel like? Because people are going to still trying to come through one of those doors because they were customers of these different brands, and they're going to want to have a great experience. But us as an organization needs to make sure that this is managed under one roof now. So what we did was we were able to create a unified UX, in some scenarios switching back and forth between brand, but the ultimate goal is moving us toward a unified brand. It took some rebuild of at least the front end piece of the application, even if the back end data was being pulled in from multiple sources. So you have to be prepared that this isn't just a quick Band-Aid, on a wound of something coming together. It is really about surgically looking at the different components of the application and bringing it together in a way that's actually going to get the best result. Because quite transparently, a lot of these things are going to fail. A lot of these acquisitions aren't going to work, so I want to give you the best opportunity to succeed. Finally, new piece of tech. The biggest piece with a new piece of technology, if you're a first-time technology owner, is you gotta be ready to change your business operation. When you adopt a piece of technology, the way that you worked before is not going to apply to the way that you run a piece of technology. Technology is just made different. It's not an assembly line. It's not manufacturing. It's not by the hour. It is about iterating and being agile and listening and getting feedback to create the right product over time. So when you adopt a new piece of technology, be ready for that change in the way that you operate in order to adopt that technology in. So there's a lot more to a merger and acquisition. We didn't talk at all about the finances. That's not my purpose of this video. There's lots of things to consider about what's the right deal look like and doing your due diligence before you buy into a company. So a lot of the things that I talked about today could be found out in due diligence. But let's be honest, we're trying to move fast. We're trying to get the deal done, right? We want that acquisition to go through quickly. We want to get the right value as the person selling, and we want to get their best deal as the person buying, right? And so these things happen quickly, and oftentimes the due diligence that needs to be done doesn't get done, and that's okay. But be prepared for the other side of that, where now you have to kind of go, okay, what do we have and what are we gonna do with it? M&As are happening. They're gonna happen more, especially because right now money is cheap, although that will change. And companies are flush with capital. So they're looking for good deals, best buys, and they're looking for opportunities to turn that 1 + 1 into 5. So if you're about to go into an M&A, if you're about to be a part of one or you're about to do one on the other side, be considering these things: the people, the integration of technology, or the change in process in order to become a technology organization. Now, if you need any help with any of that, Crema would love to help. So be sure to check out crema.us if you want to learn more about how we've helped other organizations do this type of work. And of course, make sure you subscribe, that you like this video, that you tell people about what we're trying to do to help product teams become their best selves. And we'll see you, I think, on the next video, maybe describing more of how people can take technology and help their individuals and organizations thrive.